Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's Andrew Turner, founder and host of the G&T Sessions podcast. Today we have an amazing guest, Mrs. Sharry Cramond. Sharry, how are you?
Never better.
Really? How is that?
Really? That's what I say. Anytime anyone ever asks me how I am, never better. That's always my answer. And it's funny, someone at work recently said to me, but Sharry, don't you know that means that every single day of your life is getting incrementally better? And I said, that's right.
That is the first Sharryism for today's episode. Well, it's amazing to get you on the show. So I know you're a very busy lady, and I know you've been globetrotting for the last few decades. and you may be wondering, actually, for all the people that are actually watching this on YouTube, why is Andrew flown on the G&T Sessions helicopter to Edinburgh today? That is because a few years ago, I was just minding my own business, walking down a cobbled street in Edinburgh, Dundas Street. And this blonde, vivacious woman came running up to me saying, get in this office and start working. So we actually worked together many, many years ago in a lovely company, which is now quite a big company. It's in the banking industry. But we had some amazing nights out. And we had these things called Eating is Cheating nights out, Sharry, didn't we, I believe?
Well, that was you, Andy, and not Andrew, not me. I'm very sensitive.
Really? Okay, sorry. That's one of the other guests that's coming on next week. Sorry, I forgot about that. Anyway, sorry. Lovely to get you on the show today, and thank you for your time. And I suppose the first question is, what gets you out of bed in the morning these days?
Well, number one, I have probably the best job in marketing. So I work in marketing as a marketing director, and I'm marketing director for M&S Food. I mean, who doesn't love M&S Food? I absolutely love my job. You know, I've lived and worked all over the world, and the number one thing that we missed more than friends, more than family, was M&S Food. So who isn't going to jump out of bed when they're going to do the marketing for M&S Food? But to be honest, I jump out of bed as happy on a Monday morning as I do on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning, because I think it's all just about choosing your attitude. One of the things that I'm going to talk about today is, I know this is the technology podcast, is how I believe everybody can really rewire their brain for success.
Well, it's actually a G&T podcast, so it's about growth and technology. But obviously more G than T. And obviously people think it's about gin and tonic sometimes. And I know you do sell gin and tonic, I believe, in that space, but it was going to be a non-alcoholic version today. So you said you work for M&S, but I believe recently, which was actually something that surprised me, but in a positive way. And I was really pleased for you. You had a bit of a kind of an announcement, and you had a bit of a launch. You had a personal launch. So what happened? Oh, here we go.
Every opportunity. Win your lottery. I mean, my main job, which is my main focus, is obviously as a marketing director for M&S Food and telling all the brilliant stories behind sort of, how we source the most amazing food in the world that tastes amazing, etc. But I've always wanted to launch this book for the last few years, and I just decided to go for it. So yeah, I've launched it. Win Your Lottery. It's out now on Amazon. You can buy it on Kindle. You can buy it on paperback. Just launched it a couple of months ago, and it's been going incredibly well, actually. Touch wood. I'm amazed at how successful it's been going so far.
And because that's a big piece of work, right? That must have taken you quite a while to write. And I know you've got a young family as well, so balancing that stuff. But what was the trigger? What was the trigger to do that? Why do a book?
Well, look, there was something that happened to me when I was 11 years old that completely changed my life and was absolutely the trigger for this book. So I grew up in, you've got the background of Edinburgh. I grew up in Scotland, in central Scotland, in a really low-income family. We really didn't have much money at all. I always remember Mum, and even to this day, I don't quite like flowers, because if anyone ever gave my mum even a sort of bunch of flowers from the garage, she would always say, you can't eat flowers. And she would much rather have something that was food so that you could get the benefit from it.
Right,
so very low-income family. And I was going to big school, sort of high school. I was 11 years old, and it's called high school in Scotland, and you had to wear the school uniform. And my family couldn't afford to buy the blazer. So my mum and I went round to second-hand shops, and brilliant. We found a blazer for the school. Fantastic. So it was my first day at school, going to school, went to my friend's house, knocked on her door. She opened the door, and the first thing that she said to me was, "Oh, do you know you're in the wrong colour? And I was like, and what my mum and I hadn't realised, that the school had updated the blazer, still blue, but a totally different shade of blue. And what I felt like doing is sort of running home and sort of, crying to my mum. But I don't know where I got it from. But I decided just to own it. And I said to my best friend, yes, I do know, but I actually prefer this colour. And she just accepted my answer. And then on my first day at school, I felt like all 300 kids starting year one that day, a big school, I felt like all 300 said to me, do you know you're in the wrong colour? Do you know you're in the wrong colour? And to each and every one, I said, yes, I do know, but I actually prefer this colour. And they all accepted my answer. And then I was walking home from school that night, and I'd had quite a good day, and I was looking down at my blazer, and I thought, do you know what? I actually do prefer this colour. I'm really fascinated that I'd gone from, being embarrassed about the blazer,
horror,
really preparing it. And there was 3 things I've learned that day that have stuck with me for life, that I can talk a little bit more about now, but definitely come alive in the book. Number 1, it's nice to be nice. And I think, building emotional loyalty is key. If I had been one of these other 300 kids at school, I don't think I would have been saying to the 11-year-old me, do you know you're in the wrong colour? But building emotional loyalty is so key. For any leader, if you want people to follow you, then people want to follow you. Remember that game we used to play at Kids Follow My Leader? Well, you're only going to follow someone if you want to follow them. So you've got to be able to inspire people and get them to go the extra mile. And I truly believe if you can get everyone in an organisation all sort of rowing in the same direction, it's such a unique competitive advantage for anybody. So number 1, it's nice to be nice. Number 2, if you tell yourself, I really learned, if you tell yourself something over and over again, it can absolutely become your truth. I'd gone from being embarrassed about that blazer to genuinely preferring it. Andrew, have you ever had a day where you've overslept your alarm?
Never.
Well, some people have, not you. Some people have, you overslept the alarm, and then what do people sort of find? Everything seems to go wrong on that day. And what do people say to you? Or, I know it's never happened to you. What do they say? I'm having a bad day. I am having a bad day. And it's a bit like they're saying...
Like the mind talk. It's the mind talk, isn't it?
It's a bit like saying, I'm having pizza for dinner tonight. You're almost like instructing yourself, I am having a bad day. And then it all goes wrong. Everything I've learned is that you get in life what you focus on. There's a great quote from Henry Ford, from the Ford Motor Company. He said, if you think you can, or if you think you can't, then you're absolutely right. And the way that I see it is... it's almost like, you wake up every day and we've all got like a fully recharged battery. Hopefully we've had a good sleep, fully recharged battery. But every time you use a negative word, it sort of drains a little bit of the battery. I mean, you think, you bump into people when we used to work together in Edinburgh at the sort of the water fountain or water cooler. And you say to people, how are you today? And what do most people, oh, not bad. It's terrible. I'm tired, or moaning about stuff. And I sort of say every single time there's that sort of, that's how when you said to me at the beginning, how you never better. Never better. Because every time you use negative language, it just drains a little bit more of your battery. A little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And then most people, when they get home at night, what do? They collapse on the sofa and what do they say? I'm done. I'm done, because they've drained all their energy and they've got no energy left for their family. So I try and use positive language as much as I can, and I definitely learned that day. So even if I did have a challenging night, say being up with the kids or something, and someone says, how are you? I'd say, do you know what? I could have more energy right now. I could have more energy, because I'd rather use the word energy than I'm exhausted.
You use things like more energy and more, which is actually positive rather than being draining.
Completely. I truly believe that the language that we use, whether it's self-talk, or what the language you say to others, I prefer this colour, is so important. I know you used to work in London. I'm sure you can remember times when you've been stuck in the M25 and horrendous traffic jams. And we've all got 2 choices when that happens. And I know technology is amazing, but it can't just transport you out of that traffic jam. So you've got 2 choices. You can either scream and shout and bang the steering wheel. You can say, fantastic, I've got time to, phone my sister or listen to one of these other amazing Andrew Turner G&T podcasts.
Of course. That was a really good answer, that was, Sharry. I like that one.
And which of the 2 would you think would put you in the better mood for the day? I talk a lot in my book and also to my team about we all have responsibility to choose our actions and our words. And I break that into 2. I say response ability. We all have the ability to respond any way that we want. There's a great quote I've just written out here from Gandhi, because I truly believe that we've all got the ability. What doesn't matter what other people are saying to us, we can choose how to react to that.
Correct.
And Gandhi said, "Don't let the words of another affect your happiness. No one has the power unless you give it to them. I will not let anyone walk through my mind with their dirty feet." So
that's a good one.
It's a good one, isn't it? So when I say mind your language, it's not about not using a swear word, because, they come in bloody handy at times. But it is about watching the language, whether it's positive or negative. And I went from being truly embarrassed about that blazer to genuinely preferring it. And I think if it's even a little bit true, you get what you think about or you get what you talk about, then it's worth being very, very careful on language. So that was the second thing I learned that today is if you tell yourself something over and over again, it can become your truth. So really watch your language. But the third thing I learned that day, that actually it's okay to be different. In fact, it's quite good to be different. There I was sort of standing out from the crowd. Maybe that's why I ended up in marketing, because you've got to make sure you've got your unique selling proposition. I made my choice. I made out to everybody else that rather than going and getting the new blazer like everybody else, I looked at the new blazer, I looked at the old blazer. And I thought, well, I'm a free thinker. I'm just going to go with the one that I prefer. And that's what everybody thought. And I think to get on in life, we've got to really be famous for something to stand out from the crowd. You think about, especially in the beginning of the career, if a career is sort of a bit like a pyramid in terms of an organization, think how many people there are at your level. So how are you going to be the one that gets on, gets to the next level, gets to the next level? You've really got to be famous for something. So I think I'm probably famous for being the most positive can-do person that most people have ever sort of come across, even the sort of, never better, and someone like, how's that possible? You
definitely glass definitely, I won't even say half full, it's actually always nearly full, yeah? Because,
fill it over, Andrew.
Sorry? Fully. Oh, yes, sorry. Yeah, it was gushing. Sorry, it was gushing over. Yes, it's this big gallon tank. No, because I think nobody can take away that from you, is that, you're always going to hit obstacles. You're always going to hit some kind of mountain to climb. And I think, as we've both been through some leadership stuff in organizations of a similar nature, it's amazing what you do it's about mindset. It's about that fortress, when you're talking about happiness, it's that fortress, building that fortress around your center, where you're impregnable about actually protecting your happiness. And I think, and personally, actually, from some of my experiences where I personally didn't cope with that in the right way. I should have dealt with it in a different way. Yeah, I responded to it. Yeah, I took the bait. Yeah. So you learn from that, and you feel better for it. And I think it's incredibly important to. But I think it's a bit like what I would find is that as you go through your journey, and I know everybody's journey is individual, is you get to different stages where you learn those things you mentioned. Yeah, and
I want to get people to learn them earlier.
You go through that school thing, and then you get into the kind of big wide world, and then you learn by the adversity, yeah, by going through those maybe those things that were quite challenging. Then actually you reflect on it afterwards, and you think, I should have done this differently, but I should have done this. That was a good thing about it, but that was something that I should have done differently. So.
And I'm really passionate about helping, especially people starting out in their careers, about learning all the stuff that I've learned, because I think it can just truly transform your whole life. We all get lots of business challenges. And my answer whenever my boss or the organization that I worked for gives me a challenge is, the answer is yes. Now, what was the question? The answer is yes. Now, what was the question? Because that means, and that doesn't mean to say I'm being compliant, but that means I'm always going to find a way. Always going to find a way.
Actually, but I think just as you, so when I was asking about the trigger for your book, I think that was a very interesting point you just said there about you want to work out how you can get more people to understand these. Your learnings. Your Win Your Lottery book is effectively a manifestation of all these many years of you learning personally and going through those kind of adversity things, and also thinking, how do you give back? How do you give back to the people that are earlier on in their journey? Is that correct as well? Is that one of your missions on that?
That's incredibly important for me, to show other people that anyone can be whatever they want to be in life. I grew up in a very low-income family in central Scotland with no positive business role models in my life. So I do think, how on earth have I managed to get this job? And I truly believe it's because I learned these 3 things on that day. It's nice to be nice. If you tell yourself something over and over again, it can become your truth, and it's good to be different. It's so important to be different, especially in marketing, but in any business that are making yourself stand out from the crowd. In my role in marketing, I heard a fact the other day that nearly 90% of all marketing in the UK, or all advertising in the UK, and it's the same in other countries, is completely ignored. Now, I don't know anyone who has a budget to ever be in the 90% that gets completely ignored. I saw a story recently, in fact, and I like to always give examples, not just from the boardroom, because what I'm most passionate about is actually sharing my message with just everybody. So I try not to give examples from the boardroom. So I saw this brilliant example the other day about this builder who was doing an extension on a house somewhere in the north of England. And the little kid who lived in the house kept going out to help the builder every day. Now, I can imagine for many builders, they're like, oh, gosh, this 9 or 10-year-old.
With a cup of tea, you mean? Or helping to build a wall, or with a cup of tea or something.
Well, I don't know what I don't know if maybe you read the story, but every day the little boy was going out to sort of help. And at the end of the job, what the builder did is he actually wrote out a pay slip, for the boy, gave it to him, and he gave him £10. Well, anyway, it's nice to be nice. He was definitely taking that on board, my first learning. But the mum of this boy then put that on social media, and it's been shared hundreds of thousands of times. And I say, which one's going to be more powerful in terms of him getting more work? Doing an ad in the back of the local paper, or actually doing something that's made him sort of stand out from the crowd? So I say, you've got to stand out from the crowd. You've got to do something different. And who cares if people don't like the way you're doing it and don't like the colour of your blazer? So I think on that day I learned, I was quite fascinated. I just couldn't go over the fact, oh my gosh, embarrassed about the blazer to loving it. So that from then on, I sort of devoured everything I could. I've probably done every positive thinking course, read every neuro-linguistic programming book. But I started to pull together what I thought were my simple tips, because there's some books that I've read and personally love. But I know that if people like my mom, or people from my background, or, the book's too thick, or too many, big complex theories, or just all a bit like put your dreams into the universe and the universe will answer. I think a lot of people, from my background, were like, are you on drugs? What are you talking about? Put the things into the universe. So I pulled together my sort of simple tips. And because in the beginning, this sort of almost felt like, when I sort of discovered what I discovered, it almost felt like witchcraft. And I'm like, how have I not known about this stuff before? So anyway, I was talking at this, I was working in America. I was talking at this conference, and I was just sort of giving my sort of simple tips on how to change your life. And, from my background, it's a leadership conference. And one of the other women on the conference agenda was Kelly Wallace, who was the digital editor of CNN at the time. And I was like, gosh, Kelly Wallace is amazing. And I was in the green room afterwards talking to her. She said, that was amazing, Sharry, and so powerful. And I'm almost like looking behind going, is there another Sharry? And she said, you've got to write this into a book. And when you do, I'm going to interview you for CNN. I'm like, God, but so I decided, right, I'm going to write it into a book. And writing a book is actually very time consuming. But one of the chapters in my book is about how to achieve your goals. And one of the tips that I've got on achieving your goals, if you've got kids, tell your kids the goals. So I said to my children, Mummy's going to write a book. So it's a bit like on a car, Johnny. What do you think they said to me every single day of my life after that?
Are you done yet?
You written the book yet? You written the book? And I'm like, jeez. So I wrote the book, and then because I guess I'm in marketing, I'm like, well, how's it going to stand out from every other book that's out there? There's a lot of self-help books, and in fact, I don't even like the term self-help. I want to create a whole new genre, because help to me is like, help. It's a bit negative. So I call it the self-belief genre. Self-belief genre. When I was living in America, I found that Americans spend $70 billion a year playing the lottery. $70 billion. And the chance of winning is 1 in 292 million. Which is about as close to zero as you're going to get. In the UK, thankfully, Andrew, you'll be very pleased to know our odds are much better. Our odds are 1 in 45 million.
We're going to stop the episode now. I'm going to go straight to the shop and buy a ticket.
Go buy a ticket. So I was working out that if people bought a ticket for every Wednesday and Saturday draw, forget Euro Millions for a second, that's £208 a year. But I thought, if I said to people, buy a one-off annual ticket of £208, they wouldn't buy it, because then they could see how much they're losing. But because it's such a tiny regular amount, they do it. They never win, but they live in hope. And I think that's how most people live their lives. They never win, but they live in hope. They want to change. They win the lottery to change their life, but they're not going to, because they're playing someone else's lottery, and the odds are just too big. So I said, well, look, how about instead of playing someone else's lottery, you play your own? In fact, how about if you're the only player, and then you're guaranteed to win? So that's what the book is all about, how to play and win your own lottery instead of playing and losing someone else's. And I published it a couple of months ago. And so far, I get up every day. The first thing I do in the morning is, in fact, read the Amazon reviews. And they've been amazing. And I actually cannot believe it. Someone said the other day, this book, which I do think is ridiculous, because this person I'm about to mention is such a hero of mine. She said, this book, talking about my book, is as important as Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In. And I'm like, is this real? Did my mom write this?
No, I mean, as you know, I've read it, and it's very, very practical. And I know some of the thinking of where some of the stuff's come from, and it's great. You've got a mixture of personal stories and actual experiences, and which really, really makes it come to life. But it's a very practical guide, and it's kind of a very much like kick people, in the right way, push them down the right route. I mean, one of the stories I love really, one of the tactics is that thing about, find somebody you trust and respect, and keep it in their, keep your goals in their wallet. Yeah. And then that thing about writing a letter to yourself until you've actually, they're brilliant, inspired. They're absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I've done this before, because it was someone I worked with in Australia, and I wanted a particular job when I came back to the UK. And in the organisation I went into, I ended up in a different job. And I knew that so I wrote my goal, which she kept in her wallet. So I knew that every day when she opened her wallet, she would see that goal. And if that goal wasn't true, she'd go, she hasn't achieved her goal. Because, and it just inspired me on to do it. It's a bit like, if... some people say, don't tell anyone your goals, keep them a secret and just work on your goals. I say, tell everyone your goals, particularly your kids. It's a bit like, say I said my goal is I want to lose, make it up, 20 kilos. Mm-hmm. I wanted to lose 20 kilos. If I told everybody at work that goal, and then they walk past my desk, and every time they walk past I'm eating a Mars bar, would they be like, she's not doing very well in achieving her goal, is she? I truly believe you tell everybody. I tell everybody about your goals, and it helps you to achieve them. And that certainly forced me. I mean, I was living in Florida. I was writing my book, and I'd look out the window and I'd see my kids in the swimming pool with my husband and the sun beating down. I'm like, I've got to stay in here and write this book, because otherwise they're just going to keep harassing me.
But it sounds like you've got the book bug now. I mean, it sounds like that. Yeah, I know you want to write more books. Is that right? Are you going to be a prolific author? It's going to be like a series.
Well, I'm actually already sort of halfway through my second book. So the first book, Win Your Lottery, is really aimed at everyone. And I've used examples from hairdressers to if you're unemployed to, like I said, if you're a builder, because I want this book to be for everyone. I genuinely am really passionate in showing people from a background like myself, but actually I think anyone that can pick up this book can say how you can just think and act differently, and it can completely change your life. Like I said, win your own lottery. But the second book is going to be Win Your Career Lottery, which is much more about, working in a business, Win Your Career Lottery. And then the third book, Win Your Education Lottery. Win Your Education Lottery is going to be aimed at teenagers. And my goal, which I've already written down, is that this book would then be included in the curriculum, because my kids, they get it from me all the time. In fact, my daughter said the other day, I hate math. She calls it math. I hate math, Mummy. I went, positive thinking, Daisy. She went, I'm absolutely positive that I hate math. And I went, well,
that's a good one. That's a good one.
They get it from me.
She's smart like a mother, yeah.
But I do think that this is the type of thing that should be taught, in schools. I think it's so important. I was very lucky when I brought this book out that I think, back to sort of, the growth and technology podcast, that the technology is now available, that I didn't have to, I actually went to lots of publishers to see if they wanted to publish my book. And they went, non-fiction, you're not a celebrity, no thanks. But I don't let that put me off. I look at the number of times that you're in Edinburgh and the home of the wonderful J.K. Rowling, she was turned down tons of times with Harry Potter. And I said, you know what? I'm going to publish it myself. And rather than wait for a publisher to come along, I want to do it right now because I feel right now with everything that's going on in the world, and people
it's very timely. Yeah, and I agree.
People need positivity right now more than ever. And because Amazon, who have set up Kindle Direct Publishing, which, by the way, is just brilliant. Kindle Direct Publishing means I was able to publish my own book. And I'm no technology genius like you are, Andrew, but it was quite easy. I was able to go on, publish my own book. I'm selling it for £2, which is the same price as a lottery ticket. But they have a thing called print to order, because a lot of people do still want to have, proper copy of a book.
Yeah.
Print to order means someone orders a book on Amazon, they print it the next day, and then they send it to them. It's absolutely amazing. And that has enabled me to get my book out to thousands of people, so I think with technology, the technology that's available today, anybody can get their message out there to millions and billions of people. I mean, to be honest, since I've self-published, I actually had a meeting earlier this week with one of, I don't want to say who it is because I haven't signed the contract yet, but one of the biggest publishers in the world saying, we've seen your book, we love it. Not only do we want to publish your next 2 books, we want to republish this book, putting it in different languages.
Oh, right, okay.
They want me to do the audio book, podcasts. They talk about virtual speaking engagements, all of this stuff that will get me to a global audience, kind of almost without me even having to leave the seat that I'm sitting in right now. So I am quite sort of pinching myself, but I'm very thankful for technology that's enabled me to get this out there. And who knows when I say who knows where it's going to lead, I know because I've got my goals.
It's interesting you said about the publishers that you say your J.K. Rowling example and your experience before as well is, so you went to see publishers and they said literally because you're not a celebrity, and it's non-fiction, that they wouldn't publish it. Why is that biased? I don't understand that. Why?
I think it's because, publishing, like any business, is commercial. They're not doing it. It's not a publishing charity. They're doing it because it's on the bottom line. So I think what they meant was for non-fiction books, celebrities have already got a massive following. They already have a massive audience, and also, but also they were saying, look, self-help genre is actually reasonably small. Now I tried to say, but I don't think this is self-help genre. This is a self-belief genre, and this is for everybody. So we never quite agreed on that. I said, I don't want this to be a self-help book. I want it to be a self-belief book, and I want it to be for everyone. I want this to be for people that have never, ever before picked up a self-help book, because either they would have known that genre existed, or they would just go, oh, that's not for me. That's just not for me. That's put your dreams into the universe and the universe will answer. That's just for, sort of like wacky hippie. So I just thought, a bit like, I said the 3 things I learned, you've got to be different. I decided, well, I'm going to be different. I'm going to publish it myself. I'm going to back myself. And this is about, a self-help, self-belief book that's just for absolutely everyone. And I don't care that people say you're not a celebrity and they said you've got to spend time building up a massive following on social media. I'm like, hold on, I'm a busy mum. I've got 2 kids. I've got a husband. I've got a massive job, which I love and has to be my top priority. I haven't got time to be building up a massive, following and making myself into celebrity. So I'm just going to self-publish it. And so far, all I've done actually is put it on LinkedIn. And I remember you sent me a message recently saying, I'm actually sick of switching on my LinkedIn, and every single day all I hear is people talking about your book.
I wasn't sick of it. I was proud of you. Come on.
Maybe that was just normal.
I remember you did that post on a Sunday morning at some ridiculous hour, and I picked it up about 8:30 in the morning. I go, whoa, this is a hell of a Sunday morning present. It's like really good.
You know what? I think about on LinkedIn, I've maybe got, 3,000 people that I'm connected with. Back to it's nice to be nice. Every single time throughout my career I've had an interaction with someone, I've tried to make sure that they feel better as a result of that interaction than they did before. So now I think people genuinely want to support and help me. So they were supportive, they shared, they liked, they bought the book, and thankfully they liked the book. So now they're sort of, writing their reviews and sharing it with their followers and their connections. So it's amazing how sort of what comes around goes around, really. One of the things that my mum used to always say to me growing up is, whatever you give out in life, you get back double. So whatever you give out, you get back double. So if you're good, you get double good back. And if you're bad, you get double bad back. And I'm like, oh gosh, well, if that's even like remotely true, I'm going to make sure I'm a good person, because I don't want double bad coming back to me,
I know that you've talked a lot about the kind of the principles of the book, and I will come back to it in a second. But I suppose one of the things that, why did you get into marketing? I was going to ask you, I never asked you that. Why marketing? Why not something else? Why not finance? Or I don't know why. That was a joke.
Yeah.
What was the kind of thing that what was the magnet that brought you to that kind of area?
Well, there was two things that I wanted to do. I either wanted to be a journalist, only because I was quite good at English and quite good at sort of writing little stories and things. I was quite good at English. So I went to try and get into a journalism college. And this is sort of way back when. And one of the things to sort of get past the first stage in an interview was a spelling test. And I failed the spelling test. So that was me out. So that was it. Not going to be a journalist. And so I was like, oh, okay. So I thought, well, what else can you do if you're, good at sort of writing? I can't be a journalist. And then I thought sort of about PR, and that sort of led me into thinking about marketing. So that's how sort of what, got my attention. But also I was, a lot of the stuff that I'd read about is good to be different and make yourself stand out from the crowd. Remember learning being in the wrong colour blazer. But if I wasn't that, what I would want to be is the sort of Scottish female equivalent of Anthony Robbins. Because what I would tell every single person listening to this, buy every book, go on his courses, buy his audio stuff. He's absolutely, he's my absolute hero. He's a complete genius. So I wanted to be the sort of Scottish female equivalent of Tony Robbins. Now, I could only dream of being as incredible as he is. And if you do one thing, even if you don't buy my book, buy his, because he's absolutely amazing and completely life-changing. There's a few books.
You have to stand on a box, I think, because he's quite tall, isn't he? So
yeah, there's a few books that have changed my life. All of Tony Robbins stuff. How to Win Friends and Influence People. Brilliant book.
Dale Carnegie, yeah.
Success Through a Positive Mental Attitude. Think and Grow Rich. There's some incredible books that just I've read each of these, many, many times. But I can't even remember what question you were asking me now, Andrew. I'm just getting so involved.
No, I was just asking. I was just trying to, because obviously, I was just trying to understand a bit more of the backstory about how you got into marketing. I think what I was going to say. You find your superpowers. Yeah, you find the things that you are naturally gifted at, and this the G&T Sessions podcast. It's about talking about growth, talking about how people use technology, but also with gifted and talented people. And there's no disputing the fact that you have connected into a very rich seam of maximizing your talents, maximizing your gifts, because you've not just done it in one company, but you've done it in multiple companies all across the world. So there's definitely a pattern formed from that. I think also what I saw with you as well is that you also are very good at sharing and trying to bring people up, to try and help people, coach people, and mentor people. And I presume that's because you've been coached, you've been mentored at some point during your career as well. Is that something that's helped you as well?
100%. When I went to Australia, I remember I was working in the UK, loved it, loved my job, never had any intentions of ever leaving. Contacted via headhunter, come and have this job in Australia or be interviewed for it. I'm like, I don't want to go live in Australia. Much as everyone's like, oh, Australia, I didn't want to go and live there. But anyway, the person doing the sort of screening for the interviews in the UK was Archie Norman. I was like, I definitely want to go to Australia, but I really want to meet Archie, so I'm just going to go just so I can meet him. Anyway, so I went, met Archie, and we just got on brilliantly. He's a very persuasive man. as were, the board down at Coles in Australia where I went. So I was working with Ian McLeod, Stuart Machin, John Durkin. I mean, I'm working again with Stuart now at M&S and Archie. They're some of the most inspirational, fabulous leaders who genuinely care about their people. And I feel like they've taught me so much. And then when I went to America, I was working with Ian again. So Ian McLeod from Australia, who then was in America. And now I'm working with Archie and Stuart again, because they have definitely sort of a little bit taken me under their wing, and they pushed me really hard, harder than I ever thought possible. I mean, working with these guys, I feel like I've worked harder than I ever have done in my life, but I've had more fun than I've ever had in my life as well. I absolutely loved it. Right. And they support me, so I always try and support other people. But when I mentor someone, I say, you've got to be, if you go into a mentoring relationship, you don't go into it for people to just go, Andrew, you're wonderful, you're marvelous. Now, if you could just do a little bit more of that, that would just be marvelous, thank you. No, you've got to go in and expect to hear some really direct feedback. So you've got to be up for that, because there's someone just pretending. So that's why I think this is quite straight talking as well. I'm like, no, I'm not having it. You've got to do this, you've got to do that. And if you really want to get on, people say to me all the time, you're so lucky, Sharry, you're so lucky. I'm like, I'll tell you how I spell luck. HARDWORK.
Yes.
That's how I spell luck.
So I suppose as part of that kind of that journey, I mean, one of the things I would say is that people have, what you could call peaks and valleys, right? So in your journey, I know you're incredibly, you've had some incredible experiences. How would you describe your peaks and valleys? I mean, what would be some experiences you want to share on
Everyone, doesn't matter where in life, there's always going to be really, really, really stormy times. And you're always going to come up against people, situations, and rather than sort of share what's happened to me, let me share my technique for getting over that. And one of the things that I say to people is, you've got to have a goal and you've got to have it written down. And I think about it as a bit, if you think about like a little sailboat in the ocean. So we are a sailboat and we're sort of sailing across the ocean. But the stormy times come, like, all these sort of challenges come in our life. The stormy times come in the boat, you're getting buffered around from side to side and back and forward. But the stormy times always pass. They always pass. Yeah. When they pass, you could be facing, it just depends which way the wind ended up blowing you. You could end up facing that way, backwards anyway. But if you have a goal and you know where you're headed, what do you do after the stormy times pass? You sort of get back on track.
Yeah.
And then head towards your goal. If you don't have a goal, then you just end up going off in any old direction where you sort of ended up where the winds were taking you. People say to me, what's your dreams, Sharry? What are your dreams? And I'm like, dreams? I don't have dreams. I have plans. I have goals and I have plans. One of the things I talk about in the book is I say, a dream without a plan is like a builder without a van. So many people say, I dream of doing this and I dream of doing that. I'm like, very nice. What's your goals? What's your plans? One of the things that I learned is a sort of 4-step process for achieving anything that you want to achieve. Doesn't matter what obstacles are sort of brought in your way. Number 1, work out where you are now. But like I said, if you go into a mentor situation, then, be really open, be really honest and really up for that honest. Where am I now? Where's the business now? Where are we now? And you've got to be really honest, absolute honesty there. Number 2, where do you want to be? You've got to be really clear on where do you want to be? Very, very clear on exactly where you want to be. Number 3, this is going to sound like such common sense, by the way, and anyone listening is like, who doesn't know this? But it's amazing. Number 3, so where are we now? Where do you want to be? Number 3, what steps do we need to take to get from where I am now or where the business is now to where we want to be? Great. The thing is, most people then stop there. The number 4 step, which is the most powerful one, the most important one, absolutely commit and have the self-discipline to take those steps. Take those steps. And I remember when someone was talking to me about this in a sort of roundabout way, and they sort of said, I'm going to give you the sort of 4-point plan to success. Where are we now? Where do you want to be? What steps do you need to take? And then the 4th step. And I was sort of waiting there with bated breath, ready to write this down, going, what is this? genius that's going to come. And they said, commit to taking those steps. But it's incredible the amount of people that actually just commit to taking those steps.
They do a lot of writing. They do a lot of writing, but they don't do a lot of execution.
Completely. Everyone knows what they have to do to, say I did want to be fitter, or people want to be slimmer, or whatever it is. They know what they have to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's not rocket science. Just write it all out, commit, take those steps. It's incredible the power of you just sort of writing out these goals. There was a study done at Harvard University. They had this graduating class, and they interviewed the whole graduating class, and they said, how many people have goals? 5% of people put their hand up. How many people have them written down? 1% of people. So 1% had written down goals, and they went back 20 years later and they interviewed that same class, and they found that the 1% were written down goals were happier and wealthier than the 99% added together. Absolutely incredible, the power of written down goals.
So what's because obviously that's a big sample, right? But what's the source of that? Why does that happen, do you think, with people?
Well, it's a bit like, have you ever been going to buy a new car? Let's say you're going to buy a Golf, and then suddenly you see Golfs everywhere. You're like, oh, there's a Golf. Oh, there's a Golf. And I tell you what, they were always there. You just didn't spot them. By having a written down goal, you spot these opportunities. It seems like coincidences, but it just means your receptors are a bit more open, and you spot opportunities everywhere. Stuff will seem to just come into your life. It was always there before, a bit like the Golfs were always there before. But it's just
you're kind of blind. You're kind of blind.
The right mindset to spot them.
So, because I know you talk about the subconscious mind as well, about how you program that, or how you use techniques to do that. What would you how you describe that? What's been your learning around that?
Well, I remember once watching a TV show years ago. I can't remember what it was called. Something like Your Life in Their Hands, or maybe it wasn't that, but some sort of medical TV show. And they had this woman who was going to a clinic in Spain, I think it was, to have her varicose veins removed. And so she walks in, I was like, oh, sounds fascinating. What's this? What else? What else would I be watching but someone having their varicose veins removed? Anyway, so she walks into the operating theatre, and I don't know whether you've ever had an operation. I'm sure people that are listening have. But apparently there's something called a pre-med. You're on a bit of a table. You don't walk into the
like prep area. Yeah.
The prep area, you get sort of wheeled in. But anyway, she walks in, sees the surgeon. He's like, oh, morning, varicose veins. Yep. Gets on the bed. He says, right, as we practiced, fill your mouth full of saliva. And I'm like, what? Fill your mouth full of saliva. So she fills her mouth full of saliva. He said, right, now, tell your legs that are anaesthetized. So she tells her legs that are anaesthetized. And then they do the whole operation with no anesthetic. And I'm like,
wow.
I've sort of seen it all now. And afterwards, they were talking to the surgeon. And they said, oh, sorry, what have we just seen? And he said, the human brain is a very simple thing. And he said, you fill your mouth full of saliva, then your brain automatically feels that you're more relaxed. And when you're more relaxed, you can access your subconscious mind. I mean, when you're completely relaxed, asleep, and that's your complete subconscious mind, because that's where you're dreaming. You dream in your subconscious mind. He said, so you're more relaxed, you can access your subconscious mind. He said, but you can put things into your subconscious mind, as well as sort of just letting stuff happen to you. You can sort of put stuff in there. And so if you tell your legs that are anaesthetized, they have to be. So they did the whole operation. I remember after watching that, I went to bed at night, and I always like to take things to the next extreme. So I'm lying in bed that night, and I said, so I filled my mouth full of saliva, got myself really relaxed. And rather than telling my legs they were anaesthetized, easy for me to say, I said, right, your whole body is anaesthetized. So I told my whole body it was all anaesthetized. And I'm lying there, and suddenly I'm like, hold on, I actually feel paralyzed. And I'm sort of thinking this in my head, and I'm like, I can't move. And I'm starting to sort of panic. And I'm like, well, I know what to do to get out of it. Filled my mouth full of saliva again. You can now move. You're no longer paralyzed. But so again, that just got me thinking about the power of, planting things into the subconscious mind. Part of my, being fascinated with how people are successful, and some people are successful and some people aren't. I remember reading about Muhammad Ali, who before every fight, he used to always say, not only am I going to win, but I'm going to win in the 7th round or the 5th round. And
right. So visualize it.
He always won in these rounds. And if you just Google Muhammad Ali, future history. And what he used to do is he said, I used to get myself into a really relaxed state, and I used to visualize the whole fight in my mind. And he would see the he'd smell the smells of sweat, he would hear the roar of the crowd, he would see it all in color, because if you're sort of using all these senses, you're thinking more in your sort of right brain. So he would see all that, he would see the whole fight going through, and he'd get to say the sort of 7th round, bam, he would see him landing the killer punch. And he said, it's a bit like if you do anything for the second time. You know, if you're riding a bike for the second time, everything's much easier for the second time. Yeah. So he would, and I use this a lot. I remember when I was in Australia, I was doing a really big, important presentation. It's a guy called Richard Goyder, who used to run the whole of Wesfarmers. So he's like my boss's boss or whatever. Very, very lovely man. I was doing this big presentation and he was going to be at it. I'd never presented in front of Richard Goyder before. I'm like, oh, gosh. So I created my future history. And again, in the future history, my advice is really exaggerate it. So I saw myself doing the presentation, and I saw at the end everyone getting up, whoa, this is amazing. And in my sort of future history, I saw Richard coming up on stage, high-fiving me. That's how much he loved the presentation. Anyway, so I did my presentation, and I was much more confident doing it because I'd been through the whole thing in my mind before. And at the end, I sort of shared a little story. I said, look, I was a little bit nervous, but I created this future history because I thought, if there's anyone in this audience that's ever nervous doing a presentation, it could just be useful for them. Yeah. So I shared a story about how I sort of saw him coming up and high-fiving me. So what does he do? He comes up and he high-fives me. So just like Muhammad Ali with the killer punch, it came true. So it's incredible, the power of but make sure you put the right things into your subconscious. You know, if you think all day long, I can't do it, I'm a loser, you know, no one will ever love me, you're putting all the wrong things into your subconscious mind. You've got to put the right things into your subconscious mind. Back to my, earlier point about mind your language, not about using swear words, but mind your language about not using sort of negativity.
Yeah, your lexicon.
You don't believe any of this, but just 1% of you thinks that, if whatever you think about, and a lot of people truly believe this, as I do, whatever you think about in life is what you're going to get. Even if 99% of you thinks, what a load of rubbish. If 1% if you think that's true, surely it's worth being really, really careful about what you're thinking about.
That's quite. You solved a little mystery. So I was actually wondering who actually you did do the high five from the book. Actually, so you've now the grand expose. You see on the G.
Yay! You got world exclusive right there.
Hey. So one of the things I was going to ask you about was, we talked about the G. We talked about some of about the stuff about the G, about your little journey so far, and there's a lot more to come in the future. Mm-hmm. On the T side, so what's your perspective on T? It sounds like you are positive towards it. I know that it's kind of the. I was watching the film Social Dilemma the other week. I don't know if you've seen that film on Netflix yet. It's quite an eye opener in what's been happening with some of the tech companies. So, how do you feel about the thing about tech, and how do you use it within your life? Is it kind of important to you, or is it something that is just kind of like a pain, or
without technology, I wouldn't have been able to publish my book. If Amazon hadn't worked out a way where someone can order a book one day, print it the next, and send it out the next, then I wouldn't have been able to publish my book. So, all hail. I know lots of people can be, a little bit negative sometimes about Amazon, but I say fantastic, completely. That could change my life. And the fact I've already been approached by a publisher. Where technology is going to go in the future, 25 years ago, I didn't even have a mobile phone. Right now, who would have thought the humble QR code would be seeing such a resurgence? I thought QR codes were completely dead and buried, and they're like, QR codes everywhere. So who knows what's going to happen? But whatever happens, I'll be 100% embracing it, because technology means that I might be able to get my message out to millions of people globally. I truly believe that everything in Win Your Lottery, my 10 simple tips, can work for anybody in any market that operates a lottery. And at last count, there's about 80 different markets globally run a lottery. So
we're going to be seeing this book in 80 different languages then?
At least, yes.
Oh wow! Okay.
I've written down my goals. I didn't waste my time writing a book to sell 50,000 copies. Which, by the way, if it sold 50,000 copies, would probably be one of the best-selling books that's ever been published in the UK, because books actually don't sell as much as you think. I've gone into this because I genuinely want to spread these messages to millions of people. Because the more people, and there's nothing wrong with playing the lottery, by the way. I don't want Camelot coming after me, but play for fun.
You might be asked to do the balls. You might be asked to pull the balls out.
I remember when I was in America, the lottery was won something like $500 million or something as a jackpot. And I was like, oh, well, let's buy a ticket. But play for fun. I've played for fun. Don't play to sort of be checking your numbers on a Saturday night and put all your dreams and everything into winning the lottery. When I win the lottery, I'll do this. When I win the lottery, I'll do that. Because you ain't going to win the lottery.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, the thing is with the title of the book, it's definitely a bit of an eye catcher, yeah, because people will think, oh, this is how to do the numbers on a Saturday and actually win the lottery. So then it's 10 lessons.
The front cover looks like it's sort of the ewer is covered in silver foil.
Yeah, you scratched it off.
Win the lottery, you scratched off. And I've got an amazing guy called Dave Trott. His daughter Jade designed that for me. Dave Trott, by the way, is he's another one of my absolute heroes. He's an advertising guru, genius, has come up with some of the most incredible campaigns. I follow him on Twitter, read him in campaign. His book, Predatory Thinking, any sort of founders or anyone sort of starting out right now, because predatory thinking isn't just about how to do better advertising. It's about how to communicate however you're communicating for cut through. And predatory thinking is about giving yourself a unique competitive advantage over the competition. So I really could not recommend Predatory Thinking enough. It's an incredible, incredible book.
Okay, has that come out recently then? I haven't seen that one.
No, it's been out a few years actually. You're just behind the times, Andrew.
I've got to get more books. I keep buying all these Kindle books from this Scottish woman called Sharry Cramond. It's what's going on. But buy the Kindle version, buy the physical version, buy it for your friends and family. No, it's good. It's good, and I'm really pleased with what you've been doing with it. I mean, it's also great to see, as you said, about the recognition and actually then people actually truly embracing it and actually commenting about it as well. So that's probably I know you are incredibly humble, and I think it's probably surprised you and kind of touched your heart, because you probably didn't expect the reaction that you've got, and you deserve it. It's fantastic.
It's quite overwhelming actually, because people that have sent me messages saying, this has been the talking to that I've needed, and this is genuinely going to change my life. And I'm like, well, little old me from the council estate has written a book that's going to change people's life. And it bewilders me. But it makes me even more, every time I get a message like that, it makes me even more determined that more people are going to know.
Yeah,
and you're not going to make millions of pounds out of doing a book. That's why I'm selling the Kindle version for £2, which is the same price as a lottery ticket, because I hope that just 1 week, even if someone rather than putting on 5 tickets puts on 4 and spends £2 on downloading that, I genuinely want to show people that if I can do it, and I'm not the smartest person I'm not the smartest person on this call for sure. I'm not the smartest person in any room. So if I can do it, anyone can do it. I tell you what, if you end up thinking that you're the smartest person in the room, I'd just say, find another room.
Interesting.
Get better people.
So in terms of your suggestions, so I mean, you obviously you've been through an interesting, kind of evolution and journey so far. I mean, if you're talking about giving some pearls of wisdom, some advice to other people on their journey. I know that your book is obviously very powerful, but if you were trying to summarize some really, really powerful takeaways and thoughts from today's episode, what would you think they would be?
Read this. And I genuinely think that reading this, especially for people sort of starting out, but one of the people that have given me a review was 88 years old. And said it's really made her think. I do think it'll give you a unique competitive advantage. I'd say before I come into sort of 3 takeaways, do remember what I said at the beginning about what I learned that day in the wrong colour blazer. It's nice to be nice. It's so important. And I'm sure you and I have both met people who maybe haven't learned it's nice to be nice, and they might get so far, but they only get so far because people don't want to follow them. If you want to be a leader, people are going to want to follow you. Be careful what you're telling yourself. That's incredibly important. Especially when you're sort of starting out or founding a new business, you've got to have enough energy to keep going. So think about that battery draining away with all the negative language all the time. And then it's really vital, of course, starting out to be different and work out what you're going to be famous for. But the 3 takeaways, I've got 3 takeaways for business and 1 for sort of personal life. And the 3 for business, you have got to have goals, and you've got to have them written down. It sounds simple, but most people have not got this. I talked about the Harvard study. I talked about, and I can't remember if I've talked about it with you today, be less squirrel. I talked about be less squirrel.
Oh, no.
Be less squirrel. If you think about on the roads throughout any country, there's lots of dead squirrels lying there in the middle of the road. And that's because when the car came, they couldn't decide to go left or to go right. So be less squirrel means
caught in the headlights. Yeah.
Caught in the headlights. Make a decision and then go for it. Absolutely commit to achieving it. Make a decision, write down your goals, commit to achieving them. So that's the first one. The second one is I say to people, change like you have dyed your hair pink. Now, if you came on this podcast today, Andrew, and if you had dyed your hair bright pink, or if you just sort of went about your ordinary life, dyed your hair bright pink, would the people that you work with go, oh my gosh, what's happened? That's a degree that you have got to commit to changing what you're currently doing to how you're going to change to achieve these goals. When you work out, where am I now? Where am I going to get to? What steps I need to take these steps? The energy that you put into taking these steps has got to be as noticeable as if you've just walked into a room dyeing your hair pink. That's a degree that you have to change if you really want to get on. And then the third thing, I say, whistle while you work is not just for the 7 dwarfs. My granddad was a miner, and he used to go down the mines every day. And I can't think of many worse jobs than going down the pits of the earth, hacking away every day. And whenever he left the house every single day, he always left the house whistling. Always happy whistling. And I'm like, why are you whistling, Granddad? You're going down the mines. And he said, well, I have to go down the mines. So I've got 2 choices. I can either go down moaning and groaning like everybody else, or I can go down there whistling. And which one of the 2 do you think is going to put me in a better mood for the day? And I'm like, that is so, so important. And I have used that a lot. Remember when I was in America and Daisy was, my daughter was starting her first day of first grade, which is quite a big thing, first day, first grade. And I had to go to a business trip in New York. And for a split second, I'm like, oh, I'm going to miss. Because she's like, what time are you dropping me? You're dropping me off and picking me up on the first day of first grade, Mummy. And I went, oh, no, I'm not dropping you off or picking you up. In fact, I'm going away the day before and I'm not coming back to 2 days afterwards. And I could have gone away on that business trip moaning and groaning, or I could have gone away whistling. And which one would have meant, because I had to go, so which one would have meant I had the better business trip? So whistle while you work. So write down your goals, change like you've dyed your hair pink, and whistle while you work. But one for sort of personal as well, which I think is really important. If you've got kids spell love Time. So give them your time. Put as much time, and especially when you're sort of starting out or founding a business, you're going to have limited time. So to make sure that the time that you do have with them, you're fully engaged, you're fully on it, and you're completely giving it your 100% to both parts of your life.
So you don't have to sleep much.
Exactly. I think if you, I have about 6 hours sleep a night, but it's good sleep, and everyone sort of works out what's right for them. But I truly believe if you do all of this in your sort of business and personal life, then you're going to win your own lottery. And I want to help everybody to win their own lottery and completely maximize their potential. Because I tell you what, like I said before, if I can do it, anybody can.
Sharry, what a whistle-stop tour through this book and through what you've been talking about. There's so many. I tell you, you need to use the new hashtag. I know that you've got some very interesting people in your world. So definitely, I know you've got the @Sharry Cramond. We need to have the hashtag Sharry Cramondisms or Sharryisms. But brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So thank you so much for coming on today's episode. That was Sharry Cramond, who is the marketing director of M&S Food and also best-selling author on Amazon, soon to be the world. There's probably about 6 billion people left that don't know about Sharry yet, but I'm sure they're going to know about that in the next few years. So thank you so much for being on the show today. This is Andrew Turner, founder and host of the G&T Sessions podcast, live from Edinburgh. And I'm sure we'll meet soon in the future. Thanks very much for your help. So, bye-bye.